Hi folks. So the next video in this series, I'm going to demonstrate how to make the stirrup. For those of you who are interested in making the stirrup for like maybe your vessel. Not a requirement of this project, but if you're going the vessel route, I think it's a really cool way to kind of add a lot of dynamism to the sculpture. So I basically just cut off a small chunk of clay from my block of clay, and I'm going to, by the way, you might want to turn down your volume. It's going to get a little loud here as I start pounding this. Basically, what I'm going to do is just kind of pat it down. And I'm trying to make essentially like a pancake or a sheet, also what we call a slab of clay. I'm going to wrap that around a paintbrush handle and use that. There's a couple different methods. I'll show you another method by using a coil. So what I'm going to do now is I've got this clay. I'm going to start kind of like lengthening it by throwing it down here on the surface. If you have a shoot, what are they called? Like a roller at home, like in your kitchen. Those are good to use. We have several in the studio, so if you are using the studio to make your work this semester, you'll have full access to all of our tools. So basically making just a slab. You can see how thick it is. Okay, it is about, well, in its thickest, it's about 3/8 of an inch. And its thinnest is about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to pound it down on the high side. And every time I'm doing that, I don't know if you can see this in the video, but when I'm laying this down on my surface here, I'm essentially letting it drag. Okay, so when I'm dropping it onto the surface, I'm letting the furthest part from me hit the surface first, and it's starting to kind of drag and lengthen. That's how it gets bigger. Otherwise, it's not going to increase in size and thin out. All right, so now I've got this slab, like so. I want to kind of like wrap it around something. This paintbrush is really thin, but it's one of the better ones that I have for this. I also have maybe a thicker paintbrush, but you can just basically roll up one side of this. I don't really, you know what, I'm not going to actually use the paintbrush handle, although in our literature that you guys can find on Canvas, they have one of those, like a dowel rod inside there. If you do it just gingerly like I just did, by just pulling up that edge and just curving it slowly, it'll meet and you can just make a little tube. So we're just really trying to make a cylinder here, you know, it's not that complex. I'm going to take my fettling knife and cut straight across there. Okay, pick that up. So I've got something kind of like this, right? Kind of looks like a cannoli, if you know what that is. It's a little Italian pastry, usually filled with cream. Anyway, hopefully I'm not making you guys hungry. But anyway, so now I've got my kind of like tube here. I want to make sure that the reason why the dowel rod or the stick comes in handy is because when I start to really compress this seam and join this together, it's helpful to have something inside there to support it. But I'm going to work so slowly and gingerly that it's not going to collapse. So you got to be really careful that you don't want the clay to collapse, because you know the clay is really soft right now, right? You just pulled it out of the bag. You definitely don't want to work with your clay while it's like sitting out. One little tip I haven't mentioned yet in these videos is make sure your bag of clay, after you cut any clay or pull any clay out of it, make sure you seal it up, okay? Like you do like your bread, you know, at home, your loaf of bread. Make sure you twist it. Do your best to kind of seal it up. And if you have an extra trash bag, keep it inside that trash bag because the clay will dry out naturally. And it's really important to kind of keep it as soft as possible so it's workable. Okay, so as I'm kind of sealing this up, I'm noticing that it would be helpful if I had something inside there to keep it from collapsing. So you can also use the handle of your fettling knife, although it's a little thicker. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of like join this seam. Now, before on this egg shape, on the enclosed form, I scored and slipped it, but this, it's soft enough, I can just go ahead and basically just take my thumb and drag that along and join that seam together, okay? From one side to the next. Okay, so now this is a tube of clay. See if you can see through it. I can't see through it. And while it's soft, I can go ahead and bend it into the shape that I want it to be. Okay, if it starts to flatten, like say like a garden hose would, one thing you might want to try is darting it. And this is not doing it because the outer part of it's like stretching really well. So it's still maintaining its tube shape, which is really important for the stirrup. If it starts to like kind of like collapse, I think what I would recommend doing is darting and taking a little bit of clay. Like I would carve. Where's my needle tool? There we go. Like football shapes, essentially from one side to the next. I'll show you what that looks like. And I would cut those out and I'd push the clay back together so that way there's no opening there. And that's just going to take a little bit of that clay material out of there so it can make that curve a little bit better. Okay, so here is my tube. I'm going to work a little quickly here. I'm going to cut it down to shape. I'm going to cut a lot off of this side because I want the top, the spout part. That's going to be my spout here in a second. And we'll cut this part off. Now when I did that, I kind of flattened it out, but you can still see it's still a tube. I will, wherever that goes on my piece. Okay, so let's say that my stirrup is going to go like right here. I will draw on here where that goes, okay, with my needle tool. So I know where to put it when I'm done or when I'm finished. So now I've got these circles. I can draw inner circles inside of that and cut that clay out, essentially, okay? Also use your fettling knife. Just cut the clay out, but you want to make sure you don't go too close to the edge, okay? I'm just basically trying to open that up, right, so it matches a similar diameter of the inner part of the stirrup, okay? So then the piece is ready. I will score. I'm going to kind of go through this a little quickly because I've already shown you guys how to score and slip. So I'll score this, okay? Score this side of it too, okay? Make sure that it's open in there. So I'm just taking my finger just to kind of like open that a little bit. Add a little bit of water to it, okay? So that's kind of acting as my slip. Add that water to it. I'll combine this first, and then I will choose which side of this, which extra length that I cut off earlier. I will use that then as like my spout. Okay, so let me just do that real quick. One thing I just did there, I think it's important to do, is always kind of clean your tools. After you use your tools on soft wet clay, there's always going to be a little bit of wet clay that clings to it. Clean that off because you're going to see that it's going to show up, or that little clay will dry, and then it'll show up anytime you use it again, that tool again, to cut anything else. So especially clay will always dry on these or any of your tools really. I like to clean them off regularly as I'm working. So I've got my spout essentially of my stirrup. It's a little messy. I would clean this up, you know, a lot more, spend a lot more time on this, smoothing it out. Find out where it goes on here. This is where it goes. Maybe it goes right there. Draw where that goes, okay? Now I haven't combined any of these parts, so I gotta do this kind of gingerly. Cut out the hole in the middle there. And then I would attach that score and slip this together, okay? Make sure that after you do score and slip and put these together, really compress these parts. Make sure you're supporting them while you're compressing, because that's really important. Otherwise, they're going to collapse. And then don't forget, the last thing you want to do is add a little coil. Okay, so I'm just making a little coil here. Make sure you add those coils to those little spots. And then this is really going to help with that pre-Columbian aesthetic. It's going to have a really nice, smooth transition. Okay, I'm going to work on this a little bit more. I'm going to upload another video here shortly, so you can kind of see what the finished product looks like, when I'm all done. So that's basically it for most of the demonstration. I hope you guys learned some things, and we'll hopefully use that on your pre-Columbian sculpture.